Hey guys, how are you doing? So we're gonna get up a little close and personal. I'm using my iPad, which is an idea that I got from Might and Makeup to film my videos instead of using a cameraman or my boyfriend because sometimes those videos can be a little bit shaky. I don't have a tripod. I'm not a super experienced person when it comes to making videos, so we're just gonna try and do this the old-fashioned style. So first of all, I wanted to thank you guys so much because I just reached 100 subscribers, and I know that that's not a big deal really on YouTube, but it's a big deal for me because I have so much fun, you know, having dialogues with you guys, hearing what you have to say. I really enjoy the questions that you ask me about living in China, beauty questions, anything really that you have to say. I love being in a dialogue with you guys, and the more subscribers I get, that means the more people that I get to talk to. So thank you guys so much for 100 subscribers. It's a big deal to me because it means that there are 100 people that take the time out of their day to listen to what I have to say. And I know that, you know, that's a big deal for me. I don't know. But anyway, so first of all, I wanted to get that out of the way. So second of all, I noticed that you guys really like my China videos, and even though I don't live in China anymore, I feel like after living in China for about 5 years, I have, you know, a certain amount of wisdom, a certain number of opinions that I feel like I can pass on to you guys. So that's what I'm going to try and do. At least once a week, I'm going to try and post a video about my experiences in China or about life in Asia, so that if anybody has questions about that, that would be something that I would be answering for you guys. So this week's video is going to be 9 things that I think you should know before you move to China, regardless of what age you are, okay? So 9 things that I think that you should know before you decide to make the big leap and move to China. So let me look on my phone. I have them on my phone. All right, so, and this is just my opinion. This is not like super blanketed, I know everything, like I am the end-all be-all. This is just what I think, and I probably have a lot in common with other people who write these kinds of lists. So anyway, let's just get right into it. Number 1 is that nobody speaks English. And when I say nobody, of course, if you go to big cities like Beijing and Shanghai and Guangzhou, you're going to find people that speak English because there's a larger concentration of foreigners there than there would be, you know, in other cities. And there's a larger concentration of Chinese people there that would have learned English because they're going to university or something like that. The vast majority of people you will encounter every day on the street, going to the supermarket, you know, buying clothes, taking a taxi, these people are not going to speak English, so you might do well to learn, you know, a little bit of rudimentary Chinese, have somebody who could translate for you. Because I remember when I went to China, the company that I worked for told me that I would not necessarily need to learn Chinese. It would be a boon, you know, it'd be something that would benefit me ultimately, but it wasn't something that I had to do. And when I got there, luckily for me, I already spoke some Chinese, but when I got there, I discovered that that was not the case at all. If you want to live comfortably in China, you're going to have to pick up some Chinese, and the level of fluency that you're looking for would totally and completely depend upon you, but the more you know, the easier it's going to be for you. So number 2 is racial and political tensions in China. So I don't know what country you're coming from, but I'm American, and in the US we have a democracy. In the UK, I don't want to talk about other people's forms of government because I feel like I'm going to get hand slapped. But I feel like most Western countries that have foreigners that decide to go to China have a pretty liberal form of government, as in, you know, freedom of speech. You know, we can send emails in the hope that they're not going to be watched because we know that sometimes they are, things like that. So China still considers itself a communist country. Whether or not you agree with that is your own opinion. So, you know, people that speak out about certain things in the government, people that leak government secrets, people that, you know, just don't in general follow the laws as they're meant to be followed in China, will get silenced, will get, you know, there'll be some issues, things will happen to them that are not necessarily the nicest. And also, China has a lot of underlying racial and political tensions with other groups of people in Asia. For example, a lot of Chinese people that I have encountered feel some type of way. That's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to call it. They feel some type of way about the Japanese. And I'm sure that if you know anything about world history, you'll know that, you know, there was a Sino-Japanese war. Chinese and Japanese were at each other's throats for the longest time. There was the Nanking Massacre. Lots of stuff like that. So there's a lot of tension between Chinese and Japanese people. There's also a lot of tension between Hong Kong people and mainland Chinese people. which you might not understand initially, but when you get there, you'll realize that it's kind of, there's a little cultural divide there because, of course, Britain had control over the Hong Kong territories for a long time. So there's tension between Chinese people and Japanese people. There's tensions between mainland Chinese people and Hong Kong people. There's tensions between Chinese people and other groups of people. So it's just, you know, there's a lot of socio-political issues that you might have to not necessarily address, but understand in order to understand the way that Chinese people think. Number 3. Third thing, which is really, really important. I'm sure everybody's heard of the Great Firewall. If you go to China, you're going to need to have a VPN, because if you don't have one, you're not going to be able to access YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, any of the social media applets, because they're all blocked in China. I think they just opened up to Instagram, but it's still going to be really slow unless you have a VPN. So download that before you go to China, because trying to get it while you're in China is a headache and a half. And if you want to have access to all of your sites all of the sites you're addicted to, like me, because I know that I can't really live without Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff, then make sure you get that squared away before you go to China, or else it'll be really hard for you. Number 4, one of the most important things that I have found. If you live in UK, Australia, United States, places like that, the type of Chinese food that you get from most Chinese restaurants, unless you're going to an actual ethnic Chinese community, is not going to be the same as what you get in China. You can't get General Tso's chicken, sesame pork, Sichuan shrimp, stuff like that in China. It doesn't exist. Like every Chinese restaurant in the US pretty much has the same menu with a few deviations. In China, there are tons of different places that each all have their individual tastes and individual cuisines, and most of it is going to taste absolutely nothing like anything you've ever had in any Chinese restaurant outside of China. This is not a bad thing, because it's very delicious, and Chinese cuisine is very extensive and amazing, and to me, one of the best parts about being in China. I think it's just important to throw a disclaimer in there that it's not going to be like what you're used to. So, next one. I think we're on number 5 at this point. Let's talk about, what do people in China look like? Of course, you've seen videos of Chinese people and, you know, videos of events in China, but I don't think you quite realize until you get there the complete ethnic homogeneity of this country. Everybody comes from, 96% of Chinese people are Han Chinese. So yes, they are going to look very, you know, they have the same, I mean, how would you say, I'm trying to put this delicately because I don't want to step on any toes, but you know, how the UK and the US and even Australia, we're kind of like ethnically heterogeneous. There are dark-skinned people and light-skinned people and people from different countries that all come together to make up the citizenship of one country. In China, 96% of people are Han Chinese. So, you know, there's not a lot of ethnic heterogeneity. There's a lot of ethnic homogeneity, which means that people come from the same ethnic source. Am I making any sense? I feel like I'm trying to sound important and intelligent, and it's not working very well. But yeah, so not a lot of cultural mixing, not a lot of, you know, mixed people, mixed babies, things like that. It just isn't like that in China. Next is transport. Despite China being a really huge country, the main method of transport in China is by train. And you need to know, especially when you're traveling around certain holidays, that it's going to be really hard to travel by train because everybody in China does it. In China, I feel like it's fairly easy to travel by airplane from one city to the other. When you're traveling by train, it takes a little bit of planning if you're doing it around a special day or a special holiday, because that's the primary method of transport there. And you can get trains from the Gaotie, which goes really, really fast. It's the bullet train. Well, it's about the same as the bullet train, basically. And you can get like slower speed trains and slow speed trains. I was on a 24-hour train once from Beijing to Shenzhen. So it depends on how much you want to pay, exactly what you're going to be looking for in a train ticket. Next is politeness and ethics. Okay, so every culture has a different idea of what is polite, what is normal. And if you're from the West, when you go to China, you might think that a lot of the stuff that they do is strange or not polite or not normal just because you're not used to it. Example, the first thing that comes to my head, which I'm sure that everybody talks about, is spitting. In mainland China, people spit. I mean, that's what they do. Another example is that there are a lot of babies that just wear the pants with their little booties hanging out, and they just kind of go to the bathroom as they will. There's no lines really in mainland China when people are going to wait somewhere. It's more of kind of like who can push and shove to get to the front the fastest. So these are a couple of examples of things that you might not be used to, but they're things that I found that I got used to as I was there. They're not going to be your favorite things, but it's something that you're going to have to accept if you live in mainland China, just because that's the way that they are. Also, the Chinese idea of face. The idea of face is basically the face that you present to other people and how important that is, and how making yourself look important to other people is one of the things that you should be striving for in your life. So Chinese people have this idea of face, of making themselves look good and important and, you know, honorable to other people. Now, whether that is, you know, them buying a fancy car and buying a fancy house and having people look at them and say, oh, how rich you are, or whether that's them, you know, putting on an honest front and making sure their children have an education, things like that. It's different for different Chinese people, but the idea of face tends to be pretty constant across the board in Chinese society. So, the next one is holidays. So big Chinese holidays are of course not the same as big US holidays. In the Western world, our biggest holiday, I would venture to say, is Christmas. Whether you're Christian or not, it's a family thing or it's a religious thing, whatever you wanted to say. If you're Christian or not Christian, Christmas is the biggest holiday event. In China, they barely even celebrate Christmas, in so much as it is a consumer holiday. They want people to buy stuff to give as Christmas presents. Yeah, you'll see that kind of retail Christmas spirit going on, but it's not going to be like it is here. On the actual day of Christmas, everybody still has to go to work. If you have a job in China, you'll still be expected to report to work on Christmas. There's not a lot of, you know, togetherness that is that goes on there, but it's just another regular day for them. On the contrary, Chinese New Year, which a lot of people don't even know about really, in certain places in the Western world, is the biggest Chinese holiday. So much so that everything you know and love will be closed for like a week, so you should prepare for that. Whenever Chinese New Year is, every place except like convenience stores is going to be closed, so you need to prepare for that. You know, I lived in the city, the city of Shenzhen, and it's an immigrant city, so of course also around Chinese New Year, everybody would go back to their hometown. So this is a city of 15 million people that would be absolutely deserted. So that's an idea of, you know, the biggest Chinese holiday is Chinese New Year. They also have a Children's Day, which happens in June, which is a day that they specifically celebrate children. We don't really have that in the Western world because we tend to think, oh, it's your birthday. That's the day that we're going to celebrate children. In the fall, there's a National Day, which is like basically a week that you get off for celebrating Chinese nationalism. There's Mid-Autumn Festival, there's Dragon Boat Day, there's a whole bunch of different holidays, which you would do well to learn, especially if you live in China, so you can learn when you get your holidays off. Second to last one is scams. Now, I'm not putting this in here because I'm trying to say every Chinese person is going to try and scam you. That's not true at all. What I'm saying is that if you tend to go to bigger cities, and we're talking first tier, second tier cities, people will look at you as a foreigner and they will try and get you. That's kind of true in every big city that you go to. You know, I've lived in New York for a couple of years when I went to university, and now people try to scam me all the time. So it's not like I'm trying to single out China or anything. When you go to big cities, beware of people that are trying to get you, you know, strangers that are trying to get you to go to a place where you can't see the prices. Beware of people that are trying to give you something and you can't tell whether it's been opened or not. Just in general, like, use your own jurisdiction. But if somebody is acting like they want to be overly nice to you and they're a stranger, that's a warning sign. Like, just be conscious. Be conscious. That's all I'm trying to say. You know, I've heard that it happens more in China than it might happen in other countries. Whether this is true or not, I don't know. But just be careful. Just be careful. I don't know. That's all I can say. Just be careful. And the last one, let me find it. Misconceptions and myths. Okay, so a lot of people have certain misconceptions about Chinese and the Chinese people, Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but I'm not going to try and name any specific ones because, like I said, I don't want to step on any toes. What I basically want to tell you is any prior idea that you have about Chinese people or Chinese society, if you are telling yourself that you're going to go live in this country for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, I am imploring you to let go of those ideas. Just go into the experience with a completely open mind, and then it's kind of hard for anything to disappoint you. It's easy for something to surprise you and make you happy, but it's hard for anything to disappoint you if you don't go into it with any, untoward expectations. So whatever you think that you know or you think that you've heard about Chinese society, just try and let it go and try and go in with an open mind, because my major in school was East Asian Studies. So I thought that I knew a lot about China before I went. And when I got there, I found the reality out to be completely different. So I'm just saying, let go of any ideas that you might have, any fears that you might have about going to China, and just go. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for you guys. Let me know if you like this video, if there are any questions that I didn't answer, any more questions that you might have. What are your top 10 things that you think that people should know before you move to China? Let me know if you live in China, what city that you live in. I would love to get in contact with you and chat, because I'm sure that my travels will take me back there pretty soon. So thank you so much for watching, you guys. I really appreciate it, and I will see you next time. Bye.